Alright, good evening everybody. So tonight I want to get started on the portable power station build. My goal for tonight is to get the battery prepped, put it in the box, and maybe if there's still time, I want to see if I can at least run a test or two on the battery meter that I picked up for this build. So let's get started. I'm going to apologize now because a lot of this stuff has to be up tight and close, and so I'm going to try to have some overhead shots of what we're doing while we're doing it, but it's hard to get that good overhead shot while still being able to see everything. So unfortunately, you're probably going to see a little bit more of my thinning top than you really care to see, but it is what it is right now. I'm still learning on how to get a decent overhead shot. Alright, so the first thing I want to do is I want to try and prep this battery and get it ready to go. I need to make sure that the space is enough for this battery to fit, but I also need to make sure that it's still snug to hold everything together. So I know I've got 11 and 5/8 space to work with. I purchased this fish paper to go in between each cell, and I went through and I pre-cut each piece to fit in between. So one, and this stuff, if it wasn't for the fact that it tries to roll up on itself, it would actually be really good stuff to cut. But it's kind of a pain to cut. But I found out that if I score it and then you bend it back and forth, then it ends up making it a much easier break. Put some clamps on, try to suck it together just a little bit, and then I'm gonna wind it with electrical tape to keep it all as one solid pack. So right now we are looking at right on, oh, let's see, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 11 and 9/16 right now. So if I want to put some actual foam padding on the outside to help protect this, I need to squish it in just a little bit. All right, so let's try this out. I don't know if it's going to work or not. I'm just going to break something. Space these into the middle a little bit. Then I should be able to put tape on the top and the bottom. The other thing to make sure of is that you're positive, negative, because you would hate to put it all together only to find out that you did it wrong and backwards. A little snug. Now I'm at 11.5 on that side. Trying to be very careful of these terminals. That would stink to short these things out. Okay. Again, I'm only doing this to try and keep it as one pack, keep it from moving around. Oh, running out of tape. Okay, try and keep it covered and tight. Okay. And then do a pass right in the middle. Yeah, I don't like the fact that I can still slide it, because I don't want any possible torquing happening when I put the bus bars on by any one of these cells sliding up and down. All right, I didn't like the lateral movement that I was seeing on these cells when I had just the fish paper in between each cell. So what I ended up doing was, if you can see it there, I actually went and I cut out pieces of, what are they? They're floor skid protection for under carpets, for hardwood floors or tile floors. So I cut them to size and put them in between each cell, and now there is really no movement between cells. So they help stick each cell together, because when you're in this mobile box, things moving around can be jarring, sliding, and I didn't want any sliding to happen. So I want to take a minute and talk about tonight's sponsor. Yes, we have a sponsor for the video tonight. Tonight's sponsor is me, because everything's expensive and somebody's got to pay for it. Let's get back to the build. So I've been working on the battery part of the box because it's so tight, just trying to get anything in here. I've been trying to piece things together for a while, figure out exactly how the layout should go, and at the current time seems to be the optimal layout. What I ended up doing is I took pieces of the foam that came with the batteries, and it seems like it's little 1/4-inch sections, so I cut 1/4-inch sections out and I laid the bottom to give it some cushion on the bottom, and then I also padded both sides here to try and just protect a little bit from the shock of the hard case. I'm using the slots, or the channels, inside the case. I was trying to orient everything so that I could utilize those channels somehow. And if I stood the cells straight up and down, there wouldn't be enough room on top for the inverter. And you'll see that in a minute. So what I ended up doing was, I just cut some wood for right now, cut it to size so that it'll slide right down into the channel. I did cut a few holes in the back just for some airflow, because I'm going to have fans on the side, which will be temperature controlled fans, which will allow air movement. And I'm just trying to give a little bit of spacing for some air movement. For the jobs that I'm going to be using this for, I probably don't need it, but airflow is not going to hurt it, that's for sure. So this is going to go up and down the side, but you can see I measured where the spacing was between the cells. So when I slide this down in, it should allow air to flow directly between the cells. And I'll probably do the same thing on the front. At this current time, I didn't cut anything because I need to make sure of where my terminals are going to end up being and my battery connections coming out, because I'm going to have to trim and cut for those connections to come out. But I need to leave space on here so I can mount like the BMS and potentially a bus bar if I need it on this face. So what I'm looking at right now is, we'll take this first side, slide it and drop it in, and it's pretty close to the top of these cells. Once I cut this and set this on top, it'll give it a little cushion, and when I screw it down, screw the top piece down to the sides, it'll help really keep anything from moving around. Especially if I'm putting a little bit of pressure on the outside edge just to keep those cells from moving. Because that's the big thing. I don't want these cells moving around. I want them fixed. So then these will end up sliding all the way up against the back here. And this piece will drop down right in the front. And so there shouldn't be any movement in these cells allowed at all. I cut out a piece on top. Again, cut a big gap in here just for any airflow that I can have. And then the inverter will end up sitting something kind of like this. So this board will get screwed down into the sides. This back side over here, the tongue is actually a little bit thicker. So it actually is getting kind of wedged into this channel to help hold everything down. And then the inverter is going to go right on top here, something like this. At least for the time being, this is how I'm seeing things. So then the battery connections can drop down, the BMS will be right over here. There's plenty of room along the sides here for cables to run. And right now I am also thinking of taking one of my other charge controllers and wiring this in down on this side so that I can utilize solar panels to recharge, or really any DC source that's larger than 12 volts. Honestly, I could use my 48 volt pack through this charge controller to recharge this. So I just need to make sure that I have the availability to do that and the placement, and so I'm really thinking that this space-wise is going to be best on this side. I think once I get to that point, I'm going to either paint this wood all black, or we actually have some of that rubberized Flex Seal stuff that I might paint on this just to give a nice little rubber sealant on the outside. But again, we'll see. I do have this meter, which I'm hoping to tie to a relay, which I'll put somewhere along the front here. Obviously, I have, you know, some space to work with up in here. So it might end up being really up above this rigid mark somewhere in here. It might fit. But then this will be able to will let me turn on and off the power coming from the batteries completely. Plus have a voltage reading and amp hours and all that kind of stuff, so that I can see draw and usage, assuming I can get it to work properly. All right, I'm trying to test wire this up and see if this relay is going to work. Trying to get a decent overhead shot of this, but I don't know if it's going to work or not. So the old relay that I had did not work. We're going to see if this one does. The last time that I tried to test it, the relay had more than a 2 volt drop on the opposite side. So when you connected it up and turned it all on, and you tried to turn the inverter on, it triggered the low voltage on the inverter. Let's test the pins and make sure everything is good. 3.2, 6.5, 9.8, 13.08. Last pin, 13.08. All that is correct. The fun part will be, because I'm just trying to set the BMS on top of things right now without it shorting or doing anything funky. I'm sure this is a really crappy overhead shot, but for the time being, it kind of is what it is. Really don't want to pull the pack out of the box because it's really in a very good tight position, so it's not going to move. All right, again, keep in mind, all testing. I just want to see if this is going to work. All right, you can't see it, but I've got 2 small sets of wires over here. One is for external power, which is going to the power supply. The other one is the control wires for the relay. So for the time being, I'm just twisting them around and keeping them apart. In theory, that should be it. So the BMS is turned on. We should be getting 13.09 volts on our power supply, which is our external power supply. Make sure our wires are all separate. And as soon as it hits 12 volts, our display should turn on. Yeah, let's figure out what's going on now. Oh, this pin likes to come out. So let's test the voltage. 13.08 volts. Make sure we plug the positive into the positive side. Oh, yep, see, there it goes again. Pull up that little tiny tab. There. That should lock it in. Now we're hooked in. So now let's turn our voltage up. Still nothing. Huh. So what did I do? What did I break? Ha! So did anybody notice it? It helps to have your terminal connected into the power supply. Dummy. Very loose and wiggly. I don't like loose and wiggly, especially with electrical. I like snug and tight. There we go. Nice and snug. Okay. 5th time's the charm, maybe? 12 volts. There we go. Now if I press this button, it should turn the relay on, which we hear the click. On, off, on, off. Looks like it's drawn 3 watts. So let's check the voltage on the other side of the relay once it's open. Open 13.08. Okay, so I got this far before, but the problem that I had last time is as soon as I turned this inverter on, it crapped out. So perfect. So we're drawing 1.6 amps. And then if I turn it off, low voltage disconnect as the capacitors drain. Turn it back on. So what do I plug into it to see if what it's drawn? I didn't think that far ahead. Well, it's probably a bigger draw than I really want, but I don't want it to run super long, but let's just... Oh, that ain't bad. 2 amps. No, that ain't bad at all. So sweet, proof of concept works. And then if I turn this off, alright, so this is using an external power supply, which honestly I really don't want. I want the internal one. So let's see what happens if I rewire things a little bit. So yeah, there's this tiny little jumper. Very hard to grab. So it should be using its internal power supply right now. So in theory, as soon as I turn this discharge on, this screen should come on. Good. Good. So we got power. And then close the relay and it all turns off. Sweet. Good proof of concept. Now the fun part of figuring out how to piece it all together. Well, we got part of the way through what I was planning on. We didn't get as many tests done with the meter as I was hoping to. I still would need to try and do a current check with the meter to make sure that it actually turns off if it goes over current to protect the battery. And I'll have to remember to do that at some point. But for the time being, at least I know that I can use the little meter on the front It seems to work proper with the relay so that I can turn the flow of power on and off using the buttons on the front. But there's still a lot more to do. I need to look at getting the fans installed in the box. I need to look at getting the outlets installed. I need to get the temperature gauge installed. And then the hardest part is figuring out all the wiring and how it's all gonna route. So we'll save that and see how far we can get next time. So with that, I'm gonna let y'all go. Y'all stay safe, and we'll catch up with you later.